Thank you so much for listening in. Today, I will be talking about our paper, Scaffolding the Online Peer Support Experience, Novice Supporter Strategies and Challenges. So what is online peer support? Online peer support platforms allow people to talk to others anonymously about their experiences and problems. As you can see in the two screenshots below, these are taken from a popular peer support website, 7Cups. Online peer support platforms like these provide an accessible and effective mental health resource for the general public. In the United States, the average national cost of therapy sessions is between $60 to $120. Also, mental health services are usually not covered by all insurances. This highlights the importance of online peer support platforms, which make mental health resources more accessible for everyone. At the same time, peer support has been shown to be beneficial for the users. Online support groups, when used in conjunction with traditional therapy, have been shown to be effective. Also, another study has shown that patients with perinatal depression reported that peer support platforms fulfill their need for support outside of therapy and self-reported the platform to be equally effective as therapy. However, these support platforms still face a lot of challenges. One of the most important challenges that they face is that novice helpers need more support. First of all, online peer helpers suffer from burnout and high turnover. A lot of peer helpers would sign up and use the website once and then just leave. Also, at the same time, because of the diversity of users on these platforms, most of the helpers are relatively inexperienced and do not have proper skills or training. Lastly, there is a lack of prior research on the novice helpers' experiences and the challenges they face before they become a more experienced supporter. In order to address these challenges, we designed a study to answer the following two research questions. First, what strategies do novices employ to conduct a support conversation? And second, what challenges do novices have when they try to execute these strategies? For our study, we recruited participants with procrastination problems. We chose this problem because it is a problem that is commonly experienced by most people and is not too personal or uncomfortable for most people to talk about. It is also a problem that is focused on a clear behavior change. We provided training for the helpers that are identical to what they typically receive on peer support platforms. We asked the participants to conduct a mock support conversation in a controlled environment so we can have their firsthand experience as novices. For the training, we used materials that are already developed by 7cups.com, a popular peer support platform. The skills taught in the training are a simplified version of common therapy approaches, such as motivational interviewing. The skills include open-ended questions, reflections, meaning paraphrasing what the client said, and affirmations, meaning recognizing the client's strengths. There are also other general best practices, such as not providing advice and being mindful of excessive self-disclosure. In order to better guide the conversation, we also provided two conversation goals for the helpers that are parallel to a typical motivational interviewing session. The first goal is understanding the client's situation, and the second goal being promoting readiness for change. Now for the study procedure, we recruited 60 participants and randomly assigned them to be either a helper or a client. They are randomly paired with another participant and form 30 dyads. The helpers then received the training. Afterwards, the pair conducted a 1-hour conversation on Slack, talking about procrastination problems that the client had. Afterwards, we conducted interviews with the helpers, and the clients fill out a survey about their experience. Then we used grounded theory to analyze the transcript that was generated from the conversation, as well as the interview and the survey. Now, before I go into the results, let's quickly revisit the research questions. We wanted to understand the strategies that the novices employed to conduct a support conversation, as well as the challenges they faced when trying to execute these strategies. For the first goal of understanding the client, the strategies that the helpers employed include helping clients open up with reflections, learning the situation with questions, small talk, and showing empathy. For the second goal of promoting readiness for change, the strategies include leading the conversation and empowering the client with information. There are multiple challenges associated with each strategy. In this presentation, I will briefly go over 2 example strategies and their associated challenges. Please refer to our paper for more details on all the strategies and challenges not covered in this presentation. For the first strategy I will talk about is helping clients open up with reflections. As you can read in excerpt below, the client first talked about their experience of enjoying the activities they did to procrastinate and being frustrated with tasks that they have to complete. The helper caught on and reflected on a statement saying, "There seemed to be a big contrast between your seeming frustration with establishing long-term goals versus the joy you express in the things you do during the procrastination." This reflection properly captured the client's feeling and led to the client elaborating on their experience further and agreeing that long-term commitment is a problem for them. However, what Helper 7 did here is not simple. Reflecting the client's statement and therefore digging out more information on the client and showing the helper's understanding is difficult to achieve. The main challenge that helpers face with this strategy is balancing repeating what the client said while avoiding interpreting too much. It's easy to repeat what the client says, but much harder to understand what's behind what is said. As you can see on the left, Helper 14 described this challenge of balancing the conversation. On the right, there is an extreme example of client 4 repeating exactly what the client said, which led to a negative response from the client. The second strategy that I will talk about is leading the conversation towards change. This strategy refers to using leading questions, such as the problems procrastination has caused, or what the client thinks they could do to address these problems, so that the client focuses on changing their behavior. Helper 9 described this experience as asking questions so that they can think through the process themselves and they can find the answers themselves, almost like guided questions. However, this strategy also comes with its challenges. The most prevalent challenge associated with this strategy is being able to lead the conversation without losing focus on the client. As the example shown below, Client 7 and Helper 7 spent a long time talking about Helper 7's experience freelancing because the helper was trying to lead the conversation for the client to go out and start trying to find jobs. The helper realized the conversation has lost the focus on the client and led the conversation back with a question. Have you ever looked for various opportunities on Craigslist? Even though in this case, the helper was able to redirect the conversation, the client spent a long time asking the helper about their personal details and experiences. The helper further explained the situation, saying it might be a little bit too much information that they gave, and they wanted to redirect the conversation to focus on the client's experience instead of their own. Now that I went through these two example strategies and challenges, how can we scaffold an experience that aims to facilitate the strategies and address these challenges? We believe that it is important to consider a more systematic approach that focuses not only on one point of the conversation, but supporting the conversation from before the session, throughout the session, then after the session. For example, to support the helpers before a session, it is important to help them with preparations. Some design possibilities include setting goals before the conversation, as well as providing tips and knowledges that the helpers can use in their session. During the session, it is important to consider real-time support. Some approaches include using machine learning-based text analysis and feedback, as well as using more experienced helpers to provide in-session mentoring. Lastly, to reinforce the experience, there should also be support after sessions that focus on reflecting on the experience as well as feedback. These can be either self-oriented or community-based so that the helper can identify and learn from their mistakes. How does this actually work with the challenges that I just talked about? Well, for the case of leading without losing focus on the client, before the session, there can be an agenda-setting activity that lets the helper prepare a series of questions to ask and goals to accomplish during the session based on client information, so they will be able to stay on track. During the session, an automated tool can analyze the amount of real-time word count of both parties and remind the helper if they talked too much. After the session, self and community-based reflection and feedback can be incorporated so that the helper can analyze their session and identify places where they might have lost focus and learn from their mistakes. Thank you so much again for listening in, and please see our full paper for additional details.